The grand chamber of Nexus Prime stretched out like a cathedral made of stars. Ambassador Robert Hayes walked slowly beside Admiral Margaret Thompson, their boots clicking against the polished crystal floor. Above them, the ceiling showed the swirling colors of distant galaxies, making Robert feel very small. Around the massive circular table sat representatives from 12 different alien civilizations. Some had scales that shimmered like oil on water. Others were made of what looked like living light. A few had so many arms and eyes that Robert had stopped trying to count them long ago. None of them looked happy to see the humans. The Velcaran ambassador stood up, his massive body towering over everyone else. His 4 arms spread wide, and his voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. "We have been patient with your kind, humans. Very patient. But our patience is running out." Robert felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face calm. They had practiced for this moment. A Zafani delegate floated forward, her transparent body glowing softly. Her voice was like wind chimes. "All we ask is simple transparency. Every member of the Galactic Council must share information about their military forces. This is for everyone's safety and protection." Margaret stood perfectly still, her gray hair pulled back tight, her uniform crisp and clean. She had been a soldier for 40 years and she knew when someone was lying. This was not about safety. This was about humiliation. For 4 decades, Earth had been part of the galactic community. For 4 decades, the other species had treated humans like children playing with toys. Human ships used fusion drives while the aliens jumped through quantum space. Human weapons fired bullets and missiles while the aliens bent reality itself. To them, humanity was primitive, weak, barely worth noticing. "The Council is tired of Earth's secrets," the Velcaran continued, his scales changing color with his anger. "You hide your military strength from us. This makes us suspicious. This makes us worried." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a mocking whisper. "Or perhaps you hide nothing because you have nothing to hide?" Laughter rippled through the chamber. A Drachner representative, whose body was made entirely of living metal, actually pointed at the humans and sneered. Robert felt heat rising in his cheeks, but Margaret touched his arm gently. "Stay calm," the gesture said. "Let them laugh. The United Earth Defense Force has nothing to hide," Margaret said. Her voice was quiet, but somehow it filled the entire room. "Then you will allow us to inspect your military?" the Velcaran pressed, clearly enjoying himself. "Better than that," Margaret replied. "We will give you a full demonstration." The laughter stopped. Even the Zafani, who rarely showed any emotion at all, seemed surprised. "A demonstration?" the Velcaran repeated slowly. "Yes. We will show you our military fleet. You can watch, you can scan our ships, you can analyze everything. Whatever you need to see, we will show you." Margaret paused, then added, "However, we would like to do this demonstration in the Kepler void. It is far from any inhabited planets and has plenty of empty space." The council members looked at each other. Some whispered in languages that made Robert's ears hurt. The Kepler void was a dead region of space where nothing lived and nothing grew. It was perfect for military exercises where things might get destroyed. "Agreed," the Velcaran said, and Robert could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Finally, these weak humans would be exposed. Finally, everyone would see how pathetic Earth truly was. "You have 1 standard week to prepare. The Council's observers will be waiting." Margaret nodded once, then turned and walked toward the exit. Robert followed, forcing himself not to look back at the smirking aliens behind them. The massive doors sealed shut with a sound like thunder. Only then did Robert allow himself to speak, his voice barely a whisper. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Admiral?" Margaret stopped walking. For the first time since entering the chamber, she smiled. It was a small smile, but it reached her eyes. "Oh, I am completely sure, Ambassador. They want to see our fleet? Then we will show them a fleet." "Which fleet are you talking about?" "The museum collection." Robert's eyes went wide. For a moment he just stared at her. Then slowly he began to smile too. Then he began to grin. "They're going to lose their minds." "That is exactly the point, Robert. That is exactly the point." 1 week passed. The Kepler void filled with ships from 12 different civilizations. Their vessels gleamed with advanced technology that humanity could barely understand. Energy shields shimmered around sleek hulls. Weapons hummed with barely contained power. Together, they represented the most advanced military force in the known galaxy. They waited for Earth's response. The Velcaran commander, General Thane, drummed his claws impatiently on his console. "Where are these humans?" Then every sensor on every ship began screaming warnings. Space itself seemed to tear open. Slipspace portals appeared like wounds in reality, glowing with strange light. Through them came Earth's fleet. Hundreds of vessels emerged into normal space, their forms becoming solid and real. And every single ship looked ancient. General Thane stared at his scanner display, his forearms frozen in mid-motion. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Around him, his bridge crew had gone completely silent. "Sir," his tactical officer finally whispered, "are you seeing what I am seeing?" "I must be having some kind of vision malfunction," Thane muttered. "Run a full diagnostic on all sensors immediately." But the sensors were working perfectly. What they showed was simply impossible to believe. The human fleet spreading out before them looked like it had emerged from a museum. No, it looked like it had emerged from dozens of museums spanning thousands of years. Wooden sailing ships floated in the void of space, their hulls somehow encased in shimmering atmospheric shields. Massive gray vessels with flat decks bore markings like USS Enterprise CVN-65 in faded white paint. Enormous battleships bristled with ancient gun turrets. Submarines hung in space like metal whales. There were even longships with dragon heads carved at their prows and ancient boats with rows of oars sticking out from their sides. Across the 12 galactic fleets, laughter began to erupt on every communication channel. "They brought their antiques," someone howled with laughter. "Look, that one has sails. Actual cloth sails," another voice cried out between fits of giggling. "Is this some kind of human joke?" a Drachner captain asked, his metallic voice ringing with amusement. General Thane felt his scales flush bright red with anger. This was an insult. A deliberate, calculated insult to the entire Galactic Council. He slammed his fist down on the communication console. "Admiral Thompson, what is the meaning of this mockery?" Margaret's face appeared on the main screen, calm as still water. Behind her, through the windows of her command ship, the bizarre fleet continued to organize itself into formation. "Mockery, General? I don't understand. Those ships. Those relics. You dare to present these toys as your military fleet. You asked to see Earth's military fleet, General Thane. This is our military fleet. Well, one of them." Margaret's expression did not change. "Every vessel you see before you has been retired from active service for at least 50 years. Many of them have been retired for hundreds of years. A few have been retired for more than 2,000 years. A Zafani observer's voice cut through the laughter on the communication channels. "You are telling us that these ancient vessels represent Earth's military capability?" "No," Margaret said patiently. "I am telling you that these ancient vessels represent Earth's obsolete military capability. Ships we no longer use. Ships we have moved beyond." Ambassador Robert Hayes appeared beside Margaret on the screen. "You requested a demonstration of Earth's military strength. We are complying with your request. These ships may be old, but they are still functional. Still armed. Still crewed by trained personnel. This is absurd," General Thane roared. "You cannot expect us to take this seriously." "Actually," Margaret said, her voice dropping into a tone that made several observers stop laughing, "we expect you to take this very seriously. Because we are about to show you what even our obsolete fleet can accomplish." The laughter on the channels began to die down. Something in the human admiral's voice made even the most arrogant observers feel suddenly uncertain. "A demonstration?" the Zafani delegate asked slowly. "Against what target?" "Your automated defense platforms would be perfect," Robert said smoothly. "They are considered standard second-tier military technology throughout the galaxy. Nothing too powerful, nothing too weak. A fair test." General Thane's eyes narrowed. His automated platforms were some of the most advanced defensive systems in the Velcarin Empire. Each one could destroy a capital ship single-handedly. 50 of them together could hold off a small invasion force. Against these human antiques they would be like hammers against eggs. "You wish to test your museum pieces against Velcarin military technology?" Thane asked, his voice dripping with contempt. "If you are willing," Margaret replied. Thane bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. This would be the final humiliation. These arrogant humans would watch their precious historical ships get torn apart, and then they would finally understand their place in the galactic order. "Agreed," he said. "Deploy the platforms. Let us see what your ancient toys can do." "Excellent," Margaret said. She turned to someone off-screen and nodded. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. Launch all wings. Execute pattern midway. Show them what we learned." Throughout the ancient fleet, lights began to flicker on. Engines that had been built centuries ago hummed to life. Gun turrets that had last fired in battles long forgotten began to rotate and aim. General Thane leaned back in his command chair, confident and relaxed. This would be over in seconds. 50 Velcaran defense platforms materialized in space between the two fleets, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Their shields activated, creating overlapping fields of protection that could withstand almost any assault. The human museum fleet began to move forward. And General Thane's confident smile began to fade. The Velcaran defense platforms hung in space like mechanical fortresses. Each one was the size of a small moon, bristling with energy weapons that glowed with barely contained power. Their shields shimmered with a faint blue light, overlapping to create a nearly impenetrable wall of protection. General Thane watched his tactical display with satisfaction. The human ships were moving forward slowly, almost hesitantly. Good. They were finally realizing what a terrible mistake they had made. Platforms are at full power, sir, his tactical officer reported. All weapons locked on target. Shields at maximum. Fire when they enter range, Thane ordered. But leave a few of their ships intact. I want them to limp home and tell everyone what happened here today. Then the wooden sailing ships opened fire. Thane blinked. That was impossible. Those were ancient Earth vessels made of wood and cloth. They could not possibly have weapons that could. The HMS Victory, a ship that had last fought in an ocean battle in 1805, suddenly launched thousands of small craft from hidden bays along its hull. They poured out like angry bees from a disturbed hive, moving in patterns so precise and coordinated that Thane's computer systems could barely track them. What are those? Someone shouted. Fighter craft, the tactical officer said, his voice rising with confusion. But they are moving like nothing I have ever seen. The coordination, the precision, it is beyond our best AI systems. The fighters swarmed around the first defense platform, too small and too fast for its weapons to track. They fired pinpoint strikes at specific locations, and within seconds the platform shields flickered and died. It was not destroyed, just perfectly disabled. One platform down, the tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. How did they? The aircraft carriers joined the battle next. The USS Enterprise and USS Nimitz launched wave after wave of drones, thousands upon thousands of them. They moved together like a single living organism, each unit perfectly aware of every other unit. When the platforms tried to shoot them down, the swarms simply flowed around the incoming fire like water flowing around rocks. This is impossible. Thane roared. Our system should be able to counter this. But they could not. The drone swarms worked together with an efficiency that made the galaxy's most advanced battle computers look slow and stupid. They struck at the platforms from 100 different angles at once, finding weaknesses that should not have existed, exploiting them before anyone could react. Then the submarines disappeared. Sir, we have lost contact with the submarine group, sensors reported. What do you mean lost contact? Thane demanded. They just vanished, sir. Completely off all scanners. Moments later, the submarines reappeared inside the Velcaran defensive perimeter. They had somehow moved through three-dimensional space in ways that should not have been possible, using tactics that no other species had ever even considered. They surfaced behind the platforms like sharks rising from dark water, firing torpedoes that moved at speeds conventional sensors could barely register. How are they doing that? The Zafani observer whispered over the communication channel. How are they moving through space like it is an ocean? More platforms went dark, their systems carefully shut down by precisely placed strikes. Then the battleships opened fire. The USS Missouri, the HMS King George V, and a dozen other massive gray vessels let loose with their main guns. But these were not energy weapons or quantum missiles. These were solid metal projectiles, physical rounds fired at incredible velocities. They are using kinetic weapons, Thane's tactical officer said, almost laughing with relief. Primitive ballistic rounds. Our shields will stop them easily. The first round punched through a platform's shield like it was not even there. The solid metal projectile, moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light, hit with the force of a small nuclear explosion. The platform did not explode. It simply stopped working, its systems overloaded by pure kinetic force. Shields are ineffective, someone screamed. The projectiles are moving too fast. The shields are designed to stop energy, not solid matter at relativistic speeds. Across the battlefield, platform after platform went dark. Some were hit by fighters too fast to track. Others were disabled by drone swarms that found every weakness. Still others were struck by kinetic rounds that their advanced shields simply could not stop. A few were torpedoed by submarines that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. General Thane gripped his command console so hard his claws left marks in the metal. 8 minutes. The entire battle had lasted only 8 minutes. All 50 Velcrin platforms floated in space, completely disabled. Not one had been destroyed. Each one had been surgically neutralized with stunning precision. The human fleet had not lost a single ship. Not one. The communication channels were completely silent. 12 galactic civilizations, representing the most advanced military forces in known space, had nothing to say. Finally, General Thane found his voice. It came out as barely a whisper. How? How is this possible? Admiral Thompson's face appeared on his screen. Her expression was patient, almost kind, like a teacher explaining something simple to a confused student. Because you have forgotten how to truly fight, General. You only know one way of warfare, your current technology. We remember every way. Every tactic. Every strategy. Every lesson learned in 5,000 years of constant war. She paused. What you call obsolete, we call experienced. Admiral Margaret Thompson's face appeared on every display screen across all 12 galactic fleets. Behind her, through the transparent walls of her command bridge, the ancient human fleet floated in perfect formation. Each ship, from the oldest wooden vessel to the newest retired carrier, hung motionless in space like students waiting patiently for class to begin. Margaret took a deep breath and began to speak. Her voice was calm, measured, like someone explaining a simple truth that should have been obvious all along. Every species in this galaxy follows the same pattern. You discover new technology and immediately throw away the old. You build quantum drives and forget everything you knew about conventional propulsion. You create energy shields and abandon all knowledge of physical armor. You develop advanced weapons and discard the principles that made simpler weapons effective. She gestured to the fleet behind her. Humans do not work that way. We do not forget. We do not discard. We preserve and we study. Each vessel you see represents not just a ship, but centuries of tactical knowledge, strategic thinking, and hard-won lessons written in blood. Captain James Miller appeared beside her on the screen. He was an older man with white hair and a face marked by years of military service. Behind him, the USS Missouri filled the view, its massive guns still warm from firing. This battleship was built in 1944, James said, his voice rough but proud. It taught us about the value of heavy armor and overwhelming firepower. It taught us that sometimes you need to hit the enemy so hard they cannot hit back. Those lessons still matter. They still work. We just applied them to space combat instead of ocean combat. Another officer appeared, Commander Elizabeth Shaw, standing on the bridge of HMS Victory. She was younger, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. My ship is from 1765, Elizabeth said. It is made of wood and was designed to sail on water using wind. But it taught us about positioning, about using environmental advantages, about coordinating large crews to work as one unit. In space, those same principles become sensor positioning, gravity well advantages, and fleet coordination. The technology changes. The principles do not. Margaret nodded and continued. This fleet represents 5,000 years of human warfare. 5,000 years of battles fought on every kind of terrain in every kind of condition. Naval warfare. Air combat. Submarine tactics. Tank strategies. Infantry formations. Guerrilla warfare. Siege tactics. Everything we ever learned we kept. We studied it. We understood why it worked. Ambassador Robert Hayes stepped forward, his diplomatic uniform somehow looking more military now. Our species has one trait that most of you find disturbing. We fought each other constantly for millennia. Humans waged war on other humans with creativity, brutality, and innovation that never stopped. It is our greatest shame and our most terrible legacy. He paused, letting that sink in. Across the observation fleets, alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew about humanity's violent past. It was one reason many species had voted against letting Earth join the Council. But, Robert continued, that terrible history created something unique. We understand conflict in ways you cannot imagine. Every battle we fought taught us something. Every defeat showed us our weaknesses. Every victory revealed new possibilities. We learned from everything. A Zafani observer's voice came through the communication channel, trembling slightly. If this is your obsolete fleet, your retired ships, your museum pieces, what does your modern military look like? Margaret's smile was small and mysterious. That, honored delegates, is something we genuinely hope you never need to discover. Because if you see our current fleet, it means something has gone very, very wrong. General Thane found his voice, though it sounded hollow and defeated. You have made your point, Admiral. Earth is not weak. We understand that now. Do you? Margaret asked quietly. Because I do not think you do. Not fully. Let me be very clear about what you saw today. She moved closer to the camera, her gray eyes intense and unwavering. Those submarines that disappeared from your sensors? They were using tactics developed for hunting other submarines in Earth's oceans during the 20th century. The fighter coordination? Based on strategies from aerial combat in the 1940s? The kinetic weapons that bypassed your shields? Humans have been throwing rocks at each other since we lived in caves. We just learned to throw them faster. Every species here looks at history as something to move beyond, Robert added. You see the past as primitive and embarrassing. Humans see the past as a textbook. Every war, every battle, every skirmish is a lesson preserved forever. We study battles from 3,000 years ago with the same intensity you study your latest technology. Margaret straightened, her voice firm. We did not show you this to threaten you. We showed you this because Earth is tired of being underestimated, tired of being dismissed, tired of being treated like children. We are ready to be true partners in galactic defense. But as equals, not as subordinates. The communication channel stayed silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, responses began coming in. Understood, Admiral Thompson, came a Drachner voice, no longer mocking. The message is received clearly. 3 weeks had passed since the demonstration in the Kepler void. The grand chamber of Nexus Prime looked the same as it always had, with its crystalline walls and ceiling showing distant galaxies. But everything else had changed completely. General Thane stood before the assembled council, all 4 of his arms hanging at his sides in a gesture of submission that his species rarely showed. His scales had turned a pale gray color that indicated deep shame. The Velcaran Empire wishes to make a formal statement, he began, his voice lacking all its previous arrogance. We have reviewed the events of 3 weeks ago many times. We have analyzed every moment of the demonstration. And we have come to one clear conclusion. He turned to face Ambassador Robert Hayes and Admiral Margaret Thompson, who sat quietly in the human delegation area. We were wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. The Velcaran Empire withdraws all territorial disputes with Earth. We withdraw all challenges to human expansion rights. We withdraw all questions about human military capability. He paused, then added something that shocked everyone in the chamber. And we apologize. We apologize for our arrogance, our presumption, and our disrespect. Robert nodded graciously, accepting the apology without gloating. One by one, other delegates stood and made similar statements. The Drachner representative, whose people were made of living metal and rarely admitted error, stood next. The Drachner collective also apologizes. We dismissed humanity as primitive. We laughed at your methods. We were fools. A Zafani elder floated forward, her translucent form glowing softly. My people have been spacefaring for 10,000 years. We believed we had seen everything the universe could offer. We believed we had learned all the lessons worth learning. She turned toward the humans. We forgot the most important lesson of all, never stop learning from your past. Over the next hour, every member of the council made similar statements. Some were brief, some were lengthy. But all of them acknowledged the same thing. They had underestimated Earth and they would not make that mistake again. When the formal session ended, several delegates approached Robert privately. The first was a representative from the Korthan Republic, a mid-sized power known for its merchant fleets. Ambassador Hayes, the Korthan said quietly, my government would like to request a formal military training exchange with Earth. We wish to learn your methods. We wish to understand your approach to warfare. Would this be possible? Robert smiled. We would be honored. Send us a formal proposal and we will work something out. 2 more species made similar requests before Robert left the chamber. By the end of the week, the number had grown to 7. The Galactic Council held an emergency session 1 month after the Kepler void demonstration. The topic was simple but revolutionary. Offering Earth a permanent seat on the Security Directorate, the small group that made decisions about military threats and galactic defense. The vote was unanimous. But perhaps the most significant change was one that nobody talked about openly. 3 major conflicts that had been brewing in different parts of the galaxy suddenly found peaceful resolutions. Border disputes that had seemed unsolvable were suddenly solved. Military buildups that had been accelerating suddenly stopped. Nobody wanted to find out what Earth's actual modern fleet could do. Admiral Margaret Thompson stood in the observation deck of United Earth Defense Force headquarters, floating in orbit around Earth. Through the massive windows she could see the planet below, blue and green and beautiful. Beside her, Captain James Miller looked out at a different view, a view of ships. Sleek vessels hung in formation near the station, their hulls black as space itself, their designs unlike anything the galaxy had seen. These were Earth's modern warships, the real defense fleet. They incorporated every lesson from human history, enhanced with technology that made the galactic standard look ordinary. The Council's intelligence services are working overtime trying to figure out our capabilities, James said with a slight smile. Good, Margaret replied. Let them theorize. Let them wonder. Fear of the unknown is more powerful than any weapon we could ever build. Do you think we did the right thing? Showing them the museum fleet? Margaret was quiet for a moment, watching the planet turn slowly below them. We showed them enough to earn respect but not enough to remove mystery. We demonstrated capability without revealing our full strength. Yes, I think we did exactly the right thing. What do you think they learned? Several things, I hope. Margaret counted them off on her fingers. 1. Never underestimate a species just because their technology looks different from yours. 2. Old methods are not necessarily bad methods. 3. Humans do not forget our history, we learn from it and build on it. And 4. Perhaps most importantly. What? That humanity is not just another species to be managed and controlled. We are partners. Equals. And we are not to be taken lightly. James nodded slowly. The galaxy will never look at us the same way again. No, Margaret agreed. They will not. And that is exactly what we wanted. Far below, the museum fleet was returning home, each ancient vessel carefully guided back to Earth. They would be cleaned, maintained, and prepared for the next generation of historians and tacticians to study. Because that was what humans did. They preserved their past to protect their future. Somewhere in the darkness of space, Earth's modern fleet waited silently. Advanced sensors watched the galaxy. Powerful weapons remained offline but ready. The ships were invisible to conventional detection, ghosts in the void. They would stay hidden. They would remain a mystery. They would hopefully never need to be deployed in actual combat. Because the galaxy had finally learned what humanity had known all along. The best victory is the one you win without fighting. And the best weapon is the one you never have to use. The day humans unveiled their obsolete fleet would be remembered throughout galactic history. Not because of the battle that was fought, but because of all the battles that were prevented. Earth had shown just enough strength to earn respect and just enough mystery to ensure peace. And that was worth more than any military victory could ever be.